Good morning. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the September Grand Traverse County Public Safety Committee to order. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes of August 4th.
So moved. So moved.
Support. Motion by Stepka, supported by Fleece. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. This is the first opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to make public comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll move forward to a presentation by Jen Ritter on Safe Kids. Good morning, Jen.
Morning.
Let's see, they asked me to bring it just on a jump drive today, so. Well, let's see. Maybe this one will work. All right. Whoever's really computer savvy, feel free to. Come on, Nate. Aren't you the computer guy? It's, yeah, on the removable drive, so.
I would suggest that we don't ask the board chairman to help you with that problem.
Yeah, I answered my phone once yesterday. Right up there.
How to be welded back to the...
Right, so where else can we? There it is. All right. Thank you.
They're so helpful, aren't they?
Okay, now we're in business. Thank you, Nate. Some of you are really familiar with what I do with Safe Kids. I'm Jen Ritter. I work at MSU Extension. Maybe some of you not so familiar with what I do, so I appreciate being invited here today to give you just a brief overview of our program. And basically, our whole mission is preventing accidental injury. The program I run with Safe Kids is for children 14 and under, but I'm contracted by Munson to do injury prevention across the lifespan. So I do programming other than children as well. Accidental injury is anything that's other than abuse and neglect, pretty much. So the leading cause of death in children ages 14 is accidental injury, things that could have been prevented. And this causes more deaths in the U.S. than cancer, heart disease, and SIDS put together. And 1 in every 5 children is going to probably go to the emergency room this year for some kind of accidental injury, which if any of you have kids or have had kids, I'm sure that that may be familiar to you. I'm going to give you just a real quick background of Safe Kids so you know that we're kind of working from a global perspective and bringing it back down to the community here. It's a worldwide grassroots program. There's over 400 coalitions that are state and in other countries, stateside and other countries. And so we're one of those. It's based out of Washington, D.C. The orange gives you an idea of where Safe Kids programming is right now. And so in Washington, D.C., every fall when we have a conference, all of these countries are there. Safe Kids does research-based, does research and then bases their programs on that research that they've done. So they're all research-based programs that we deliver. Now, these are our national sponsors. I don't get money from any of these people as far as staff time or anything like that, but being a Safe Kids coalition, you can have one per area. So I have a 3-county area, Grand Traverse being my main county. And what we do is, by being a Safe Kids Coalition, this is where I am able to access programmatic materials. So they have grants available to me that are only available to Safe Kids Coalitions to get helmets, like from Bell will donate so many helmets for Safe Kids a year, or NHTSA does programming with the booster seats, and FedEx sponsors a Walk to School program, things like that. General Motors, believe it or not, they did give us a bunch of money this year, kind of before things happened with GM, so actually they used to be our main sponsor, but we got quite a bit of money from them still this year. Again, injuries are the leading cause of medical spending. This is a big deal to us because taxpayers incur a lot of this money. I also work part-time or on call in the ER here and there, and I know that a majority of these families that come in aren't seeking help in a clinic or a doctor's office for stitches and head injuries and things like this because they don't have insurance. So they come to the ER hoping that they don't have to be caught up with and they can have it taken care of because they have to be served through an ER. But then in return, a lot of the taxpayers incur this expense. So for a breakdown, if you break that down, every dollar that we spend on car seats saves us $32 as taxpayers for injuries and things that are being incurred, and so on and so forth. So every dollar spent on bike helmet saves $30. Smoke alarm saves $69. So the coalitions have to be led by a coordinator. That's an agreement we have with Safe Kids, which is my position. And I think we have a terrific coalition. This is not anything I could do on my own, though, by any means. I can coordinate this, but it takes a huge coalition to do everything. I need, my firefighters and law enforcement people and health department and all these agencies to be a part of this. And this is our list of our local members on our board. We meet every 2 months and kind of go over what kind of requests we've had, who would be best suited to deliver that request. Certainly if it's fire prevention, that's not my expertise. So that means Metro Fire or City Fire would have to, maybe carry out at that event. If it's car seats, then definitely that would be, my expertise and somewhere I should fall into. So these are just an idea of who our partners are. All our local law enforcement, fire, baby pantries, DHS. And our mission is to educate people and create safe environments. So if we have the means to, through the grants from Safe Kids, then we give out equipment to people to help make them safe, whether it be bike helmets or car seats or things like that. But foremost is to educate them. So I don't want them returning to me all the time saying, I need this car seat installed, or I need this fixed or done. I want to teach them so they can reproduce what I'm showing them and go on and teach their family and teach their grandparents and teach everybody else. Create safe environments, conduct research, advocate for effective laws. I'm very heavy into that with traffic safety. I testified at the Senate Transportation meeting to get the booster seat law. So I'm very active in that, more on a personal level than a Safe Kids level probably. This gives you a little bit of timeline. You might have seen our trailer outside MSU Extension parking lot there for a while. But basically this started almost 10 years ago. Munson had ownership of Safe Kids, and it was in a file cabinet drawer in one file with a couple pieces of paper, and they did one bike helmet program a year. And at that time I had been certified as a car seat technician, which is a week-long class, which sounds crazy, but it goes over crash dynamics and lots of other things than car seats. We don't even talk about car seats till the last couple days. And I did that for my parent education position at MSU, and asked if I could maybe do something with this program, because car seat checks weren't being done locally at all. Nothing was being done here. And MSU Extension said they would, support me in that, but couldn't give me any time, but, would let me use my office and things like that. And so Munson signed off on Safe Kids, and it became an MSU Extension program. And we reorganized our board and went from 1 event to 35 events the first year. Then in 2007, this was becoming so popular, and being so well heard of, that Munson agreed to contract me for 15 hours a week so that we could be a coalition. 2007 is when you had to become a coalition with Safe Kids. You used to have chapters, coalitions, and then the worldwide. And chapters don't exist anymore. You had to step up to the plate and say you were going to, give a little bit more to this program. And so with Munson, I also do adult injury, teenage, I do other things as well. And now we're continuing and we're becoming extremely successful. We're being very well heard of. Every parent that goes through Bunsen, gets a sheet that has all the car seat technicians locally on it, that knows where to find our 2 fitting stations every month to get seat checks. They know where to go for life vests. They know where to go for bike helmets. This is all given to them when they register to have a baby at Munson, so we're trying to hit all those parents so they know about us. But I'm getting more requests than I'm going to be able to fill now because it's become such a popular program. So when you look at it, and this is broke down, and I always tell you these numbers are skewed a little bit, this tells you what the leading trauma risks are to children. And on the left is your national numbers. So motor vehicle crashes are always number 1. And locally, motor vehicle crashes are still number 1, not for traumas, but for injuries. But for traumas nationally, they are. Drowning's number 2 nationally. Number 3, falls, so on. You can read it. Locally, it comes out a little different. These numbers I pull from trauma activations at Munson ER. And I always tell people this is a little skewed because not everybody comes in. If you have a near drowning, a lot of people don't come in to the ER. They get rescued by a family member or something, and so they don't seek out that medical attention. They might get a burn and, not follow up for a couple days and just go to their doctor. So these are only numbers we get through there. So I always tell people they're a little bit skewed because I know we have the potential for other injuries around here. We have more drownings is last on this, but I know we have more potential for drownings, and I think there's a lot more near drownings that we don't see because of our risk of water around us. So, whenever you have an increased risk, you have an increased chance of having injuries. Again, we reach families directly. Everything's research-based. I kind of talked about that. This is just kind of an overview of some of the programs I do. I do a SLIPS program, which is Senior Living Injury Prevention. So I do this at senior centers if they request it. Some of your regular events like 911, Camp 911 and the Senior Expo and things like that. Last year in the ER we had over 4,000 falls, and 3/4 of those were adults actually that were trauma activations. So something was life-threatening with that fall, whether it be a head injury or a broken hip for an elderly person. So that's kind of a big deal. So I teach senior citizens about falls, how to prevent them, how to properly get up from a fall, and some precautions to take. Head injuries, huge, whether the bottom one's actually the motorcycle rally for Father Fred. The top one's a little boy that I had that got hit by a car in his own yard. Luckily, he had a bicycle helmet on. We did a program at his school as a result of it. His parents were very supportive in wanting to get that message out there. So we do... Again, I get grants from Safe Kids to get bike helmets and have worked with the Sheriff's Department in the past with their OHSP grants, and we do bike helmet events and fitting bike helmets, and we do a trade-in at the Cherry Festival, so if they have a helmet and it's damaged, I'll replace it. I don't just give them out to anybody, but if you have a damaged one or one that doesn't fit. Wheeled sports, so rollerblading, any of those types of things, motorcycle helmets. And this year we're going to be hitting on skiing and sledding helmets as a request from our ER doctors because we're having so many kids come in with head injuries from sledding and skiing and snowboarding. The snowboarders and skiers are catching on to it. They're starting to wear the helmets because your ski clubs are making them do that, which is a good thing. But they're not catching on in some of the other winter safety areas. Our Buckle Up program is our biggest program. We do 2 monthly car seat inspection stations, so the 2nd and 4th Friday every month, all we do all day is car seat checks. And I usually double and triple book those. I do special events throughout the year, so on the 12th, the Sheriff's Department and I are doing a car seat check at Myers. We do, with the dealerships, things like that. Twice a week I go into the neonatal intensive care unit at Munson and assess those babies before they go home, because a lot of those babies are going home at 3.5 and 4 pounds and they don't fit in a car seat yet. So we have special car beds that, a loaner program, and they go home in those because they can't even fit. The car seat straps are just way too big, they don't even fit yet. And all these again are performed by certified technicians. Myself and Fred Dolker are the instructors for the area. And I have about 30 technicians now that I said go through a week-long class. And so my job is to make sure they stay certified, that they get their checkoffs. They have a 2-year period to do so many checkoffs to get continuing education credits. And there's not a lot of opportunity up north for that. In the south part of the state, there's education opportunity everywhere. So I make sure with a minimum of every 2 years, so everybody stays certified. And usually every year we do a class which is hosted in the jail training room and get everybody all their credits at once. And so we also have a program that we've coordinated with DHS. And if somebody qualifies with DHS and with their worker, they can get a free car seat and they come get it through us so that it's being distributed through a technician, which takes away the liability from DHS giving that seat out. Other programs we do that have to do with motor vehicles, again, I'm big into traffic safety. Car Fit for mature drivers, it's a great program. It's almost like car seat fittings, but for older people. It's fabulous. I got trained from AARP on that. And it's amazing how many people that are older don't know they have blind spots all over and they can't reach their pedals and they have the steering wheel right in their chest and you can adjust that car to fit them, whether it's with props such as things to sit on to raise them up. You wouldn't believe how many older people, when I went to my first one of this, I was just amazed how many older people, we went to adjust their mirrors because we can almost eliminate your blind spot, and they said to us, oh, don't adjust those are adjusted in the factory. And didn't realize that you have to adjust them for yourself. You know, they thought the way they're set in the factory is the way they're supposed to stay forever. And so you have all these people driving with these blind spots. In and Around Cars is a program that we do that's with Cub Scouts typically. This was a huge program. We did this at Williams Chevrolet this year and put through like 150 Cub Scouts. And it talks, there's 5 stations they rotate through, which is like a booster seat one. One is an OnStar, so they're familiar with that if they ever were in a crash and heard that come on and it made them nervous, so this way they can get familiar with it. One is talking about the temperature inside and outside a vehicle, both for kids and animals. So we have a gauge where we can put a temperature thermometer inside and one outside and show the difference between those two, which even on an October day, when I do this at the city fire station in October, my car generally I can get to read 20 degrees more than outside. And that's in October, not in the middle of summer. And they go through, we also have a station for parents where the parents get an SUV and we have a mat that rolls out behind the car about 18 feet. And typically in the SUV, the parent cannot see that child. We have kids sit and play checkers or whatever on the mat at all these different intervals. And typically that parent cannot see those kids until over 18 feet behind them. So that's just trying to educate parents to walk around the vehicle before you get in. Don't assume that, you know, if you have a backup monitor or something like that, it's going to activate right away, because they don't. We do water safety education. I love doing this as well just because of the area we live in. We've done Marina Day, we've done the Bay Day, we've done Safe Kids Week at the junior high school, teaching kids about, it was amazing at the junior high school how many kids didn't know how to put on a life vest properly. Just amazed. And we did it during lunch hour so we could teach everybody how to do this. And make it fun, so we have like, you know, kind of like relay courses and things like that. But a lot of these kids had never put a life vest on and had no clue how to put it on. And I think that's really important up here. We have so many people that will boat without them or boat without wearing them. You know, and unfortunately we have a few incidents, not too many, but still we have the risk there. We have a water watcher tag program. We give these to our home visit families, play groups. We do it at health fairs. And the tag's really for the parent, and it comes on a lanyard. And it's to remind the parent that they're in charge watching the kid, because we do have drownings where the parent says, oh, I thought somebody else was watching them. Or they're on the phone, they're on their cell phone on the beach and ignoring them. So this tag reminds them, if you're going to go somewhere or go do something or not pay attention, you have to pass the tag off to somebody else to wear. And that was something that was developed nationally. Why do we do what we do? I love my job. I absolutely love to go to work every day. I love working with these kids. I love making people safe. I love teaching people how to make their kids safe and teach them to do it the right way, because I don't want them to come to me every time. I mean, if they have to because they just aren't getting it, that's great, but I want them to be able to take what I have taught them and show their family, show their parents, so when they're watching the grandkids, they know how to do things. And you wouldn't believe how many grandparents, and I've had great-grandparents come into car seat checks because we have teenagers having babies, and so the great-grandparents are the ones watching the children. They come in and get their car seats checked. But again, with 15 hours a week, I'm pretty limited right now as to how far I can program. If I had more staff time, and I believe a request was put in for staff time this year, for additional staff time. We would do increased fall prevention programming just because that is our #1 trauma in the area. We would definitely do increased water safety programming. I'd like to get involved with the community pools, or some of the other pools. Some of the hotels do swimming lessons and things around town, because we have such a risk for water issues around here because of our location. This year we are, as I had said, we have this program called Chill Out, and that's going to be rolling out this year. And that was developed with me by, I don't know if you remember, the mom from Fife Lake. She works at the hospital, and her daughter was killed in Fife Lake 2 years ago sledding. And, on a hill that she herself had sled down millions of times as a child, and then her daughter was killed on it. So she helped develop that winter program. And that's going to talk about snowmobiling. That's going to be a partnership with other agencies as well, again, because I can't carry out all this myself. I need those partners to help me. And again, we would just fulfill more programming for schools, groups, agencies that request programming, because we're getting a lot of those requests now to come in and do programming. So I want to be able to fulfill as many as I can. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. If not, I'm at the extension. You guys know where to find me.
Questions, comments for Jen? Jen, the only thing I would mention, as you know, Grand Traverse County has a contract with Grand Traverse Metro Fire to do fire safety, or fire prevention and public safety programs.
Yep.
And I'm sure that they're coordinating with you. I just would stress that collaboration between the two.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't even touch on fire because that is just not my forte, and let Meredith do that.
I know they're doing some stuff with some of the AFC homes and nursing homes too, so maybe they can help you with some of your fall prevention programs with those.
That would be great.
Okay?
Okay.
Is that right, Dan? Okay.
Thanks,
Any other
Jennifer.
questions for Jen? Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks, Jen.
Continue the great work. Our community needs it. Jail, Captain Hall, and Undersheriff, whichever.
Good morning, I'm Captain Bob Hall, the jail administrator. I bring a couple issues in front of the Public Safety Committee this morning. The first is our jail food contract renewal. The current contract that we have expires at the end of this year, December 31st. The contract allows for one-year extensions if the vendor and the county were to agree on a price. If not, it goes back out for the usual bid process. We have received from our current vendor, Aramark, a proposal of a 2.5% increase for 2010 with no increases for 2011 or 2012. This represents a price raise from $1.54.6 per meal to $1.58.5 per meal, and it would stay fixed through December 31st of 2012. And I'm looking for some direction from the board as to whether we accept that proposal or go out for bid.
Dennis?
Bob and I talked about this before we approached Aramark, and we do have the option to extend the contract. I understand Bob's very happy with the contract and with the company. We bid this out 3 years ago, as he said, and 3 years ago, Bob, do you remember how many bids we got? Did we just get two?
Two.
So from our previous contractor, Canteen, and from Aramark, I suggested to Bob that he go out and ask them if they would be willing to extend the contract or see what he could negotiate with them, and I think a 2.5% increase with no increase in 2011 and 2012 is really pretty attractive. I mean, that means they're basically, over the life of a 6-year contract, raising their rates 0.5% a year, which I think is really reasonable. Since the department is very happy with the service and they've gotten some improvements in some areas in the service, I'm very supportive of doing this and just extending the contract for another 3-year period.
Larry?
I would move that we extend the contract for 3 years, beginning January 1st, 2010, ending December 31st, 2012, with an increase of 2.5% for the year 2010 and 0% increase 2011, 2012.
Support.
I have a motion by Fleece, supported by Stepka. Further discussion? Bob, have you heard from Canteen about this at all?
No, I have not.
Recently, we had the issue with the commissary thing, and a representative of their company pretty much polled all the commissioners individually, I think, and I just wanted to make sure that,
But I mean, they may not be aware that we're doing it either, so.
it makes absolutely good sense to me, fiscally, it's very sound decision-making, and we're happy with the product that we're getting.
Yeah,
And I
and,
think
we
that's the key piece.
We typically won't go more than 6 years on one of these, or that's what we've been trying to do lately, because, that's time when it definitely is time to rebid it. But Canteen was with us for quite a few years, were they not? So, it's a change now, and my intention, if you approve this, we'll bid this out in 2 more years for the next go-round, and hopefully we'll even get better pricing.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
The second issue I bring before this committee is another contract that expires December 31st of this year. It's for our medical health director for the medical health program for the jail. For the last 29-plus years, the contract has been with a local physician, and it just happens to be the same physician. And he's provided the overseeing of the medical department in the jail since I can remember. Excuse me. Recently, we've been getting approached by several different vendors who are now in the medical health care services for corrections. They've been doing prisons and large jails, but now they're in medium-sized and small jails, several of them all over Michigan, indicating that they can provide a better product at a comparable cost, but they won't give me any cost because they're not sure what we're looking for. I had conversation with Dr. Wilcox, our current vendor, and he's excited to find out what these different services, these different companies might be offering. Because typically what they do is they contract local physicians as their representative, and he's considering maybe that might be a route he would take. So he's not necessarily anti this concept. I guess what I'm asking the board to do is to be able to put out an RFP that actually has 2 parts. One is the traditional model of just a medical services director that we've always used, or the second option would be provide a comprehensive program, healthcare program for the jail, which would include, or could include, nurse, psychiatric, pharmaceuticals, specialists, referrals, hospitalization, everything. I mean, they're offering a smorgasbord of different things so that we can actually do some comparisons and see which one's in the best interest of Grand Traverse County and our jail. And then I plan on coming back to you the first meeting in November, your meeting, and recommend we change or stay with the current model that we've been using.
Bob, will this RFP be like a shopping list, so we'll have the options of choosing some of those?
Yes.
Or all of them? I'd hate to go out and either we do one or we do everything, because I think we have some local vendors that have provided us reasonably good service at good rates.
Certainly.
And I'd hate
The
to
RFP actually delineates 2 separate programs. Program A is the traditional model of just a medical health director for the jail. And all the services that we currently are using, all the other vendors, pharmacy, and everything, all remain the same. The second program, Program B, is a comprehensive program that may, and it says we may use any or all of these following components, but we want them to provide us detailed information and cost of all the different facets, which match all the individual vendors we're using now. And I put in there that we may use parts of your program, or all of your program, or none of your program, so that we can make the decision which is in the best interest. We have that option.
I think we've had a number of local vendors that have provided us good service for a long time. I'd hate to just kick them out all the way around because we're changing the whole process.
We're just looking at both sides.
That's
See what's in our best interest. But it represents a significant change over what we've done in the past. That's why I brought it before the board.
Dennis?
Yeah, I'm glad you're also going to look at the nursing component. I mean, we're fortunate that we have nurses working for us, but, recently we've had difficulty And I'm not suggesting that we want to change having the nurses as employees, but I think it'll give us a good idea of the comparison. I'm also interested to see how this works out, because it may reduce or kind of insulate us from some of the liability in terms of medical decisions that were made, and so there could be a benefit of that. So I'm glad you're doing this. I support him doing it.
We're looking at records, too. By 2014, all records, medical records in clinics, hospitals, jail clinics, and everything have to all be computerized. No more shelves lined with all these folders. Everything has to be computerized. And I don't know where to begin to start with that. A healthcare service would be responsible for doing all that.
Are we currently up to full staff on nursing? I know we were having an issue
We
hiring
still
one.
do not have a midnight nurse, although we're interviewing feverishly, trying to find out. We're getting a few applicants, and for whatever reason, they're not making it, so.
And I'm assuming this company would also be providing their own malpractice insurance, because that was an issue a couple of years ago.
That's required.
Gentlemen,
That makes sense.
do we need a motion to do the RFP, or no, it's just going to take care of that?
We do plan on sending that out as early as tomorrow, though, because in order to get into the timelines, and we ask permission to do that.
I believe that's a purchasing policy that the county administrator and you as jail administrator can take care of without our decision. Anything else, Bob?
No, sir.
What's our jail count?
It was 165. I don't know what it is this morning. I forgot.
Sneaking back up, isn't
Yes,
it?
it is. So the church.
October's coming.
Yes. Thank you.
It's interesting.
Thanks,
I had
Bob.
two members of the old Blue Ribbon Committee that we set up approached me in the last couple of weeks. Sheriff Bensley had an article in the paper about jail. There was an article, I believe, in the paper, so I think that's what spurred him on.
And there was an interview on TV.
And the question they were asking was, will the county, if the county starts to re-engage in this discussion, will there be a role for the Blue Ribbon Committee to be regenerated to kind of assist in that, since they put in those 6 or 8 months, or however long it was, of work? And I told them that was an interesting idea. I hadn't thought of it, but that I would certainly talk to the board about that possibility. So they're interested, some of them anyway, in being part of that discussion again.
Mr. Undersheriff, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, I'm Nate Alger, I work for the Sheriff's Office. We, once again, have been offered a grant from the Office of Highway Safety Planning in the amount of $26,000 for the Safe Communities Grant, which basically allows us overtime enforcement for seatbelt patrols and OWI patrols. This grant is also used, we have $4,000 awarded in this grant to us to purchase car seats that we have partnered previously with Safe Kids, and we will be doing that as well this year, to purchase car seats from them for this purpose. This grant has gone high and low over the last few years. We used to be able to do intersection enforcement as well. That has kind of gone by the wayside, and they're strictly focusing on OWI and seatbelt patrols. This grant pays for the wages and fringes of the officers, the overtime wages and fringes of the officers, $1,100 in fuel, and some overhead for the project director. It is not all-inclusive. There is a county portion of this that is anything above the $1,100, court overtime, and things of that nature. We would like to request to accept this grant.
Motion?
I'd move that we have the Sheriff's Department, the county accept the grant in the amount of $26,000 as outlined by the undersheriff.
Support. Motion by Fleece, supported by Stepka. Further discussion?
Nate, what is it this year? Do you know?
I'm sorry?
The amount this year?
We've asked for $25,891. We were awarded $26,000.
For 2009?
What did you think?
2009 was
Last
a little
year,
higher
that's
than
what I'm
that.
saying. Okay, I was just trying to come.
It is going down, it has been.
I think it was about 28 last year. if I remember.
We used to get a lot of money in this grant, over $30,000, in excess of that, actually. And that's when they were hoping to get to that 97th percentile. They did, and since then it's been kind of going down.
Do we,
Are we required to do this with overtime labor, or can we use it for some of our straight times?
It has to be overtime wages.
We have a motion, further discussion?
Yeah, we already made it.
I know, we have a motion.
He's asking for
Further
discussion.
discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
And the second item I bring to you today is a TASER grant. Lieutenant Morrow, with the Sheriff's Office, applied for a grant through Target, community grant for radios. We received $1,000 for the purchase of radios. We would like to accept that.
So moved.
Motion by Fleece, supported by Stepke, to approve the grant acceptance and $1,000 for the purpose of replacing portable radios. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. That brings us to the elephant in the room, is that what we call it?
That brings us to the construction of the pole building for storage.
Sorry. All right, I'm sorry, that was under unfinished business. Is there anyone in the room wishing to make public comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the first unfinished business, which is building site for an equipment storage facility for the Sheriff's Office.
I think Sheriff Benson's coming up to assist in this conversation. No? Okay.
I want you to take the phone.
On the June 2nd Public Safety meeting, we approached the board with the discussion about our needs for a facility, off-site facility for storage purposes. We have a wide array of equipment that we need to store, and right now is being piecemealed across the county and stored in our jail garage. We have been undergoing an extensive search. Sheriff Bensley has actually conducted that search and has looked at many properties and many pole buildings. Previously, at the public safety meeting on June 2nd, there was a request that we look for buildings that are already erected and try to determine if that cost would be, if it would be cheaper to buy a building already existing. They've gone through, there's a listing of properties here as well as buildings in the public safety item. And what we found is that there really isn't anything out there that fits spatially, location-wise, or price-wise. We have identified a parcel, property, that we feel is close enough to the Sheriff's Office. The price is right, and we would like to pursue the purchase of that property. We would like to engage in discussions with the owner of that property for sale. So that is my request to you today.
Are we expecting to find out this morning the location of that property, or no, we will find that out at a later time?
I'm okay with telling you the location of that property, but what I
That's what
fear,
would be normal.
Well, we're not required to discuss in public the property, especially if there's negotiations that'll take
Negotiations on the
place.
price. That's fine.
I think giving you an idea of the general area is appropriate, but I guess my concern is, I mean, they have done so much work on this, and the sheriff came and met with me for probably an hour and a half, and we went through a whole book of properties that he's evaluated. He's really looked at a lot of properties. And I'm going to take their professional opinion that they really couldn't find anything that was suitable. There were things that, could be suitable in some ways, but not in others. So making that assumption, now we're to the point where we're looking at property, as I understand it. And we haven't talked about this, but, as I was sitting here listening to you, my concern is that there's still no bid process. There's no competitive bid to look at the property and the construction. And I'm just questioning whether or not we need to kind of go do a bid that would say we're looking for this much land in this kind of a location within this proximity, and actually kind of formalize this into a bid, and then get a bid from that. Just because I don't think it's an exemption from the purchasing.
I did look at the procurement manual, and I couldn't quite pin it to a specific component of that procurement manual.
Well, the only thing we're allowed to exempt from bidding is professional services. So, there is the possibility of hiring a developer. Another way to go about this would be to go out and put a proposal out that would say, we want to do a design-build project, and we're looking for someone to provide a property within these locations with these kind of specifications, and let people bring in a cost for a design-build where they would take on the responsibility, turnkey, and hand you over the building. That would be another option, but I'm sorry we didn't talk about this more, but I just don't see a process where we could eliminate bidding altogether. It just seems others would say, we didn't have an opportunity at that. Now, although, having said that, there have been times when the county has purchased property, I don't think recently, where the county has purchased property because of its location, because of other attributes, and we don't bid that. So, I can do some checking if you want with the state, just to make sure.
Well, when I read this, there's 25 different parcels here approximately that you've looked at, either lots or buildings, and I certainly want to give you credit for that, making sure that we ask you to go look at existing buildings, and I have no question that you've done that, and I don't believe anyone else does either. My concern is that, to purchase a piece of property without knowing where it is or specifically what the cost is, and I understand, maybe we give you the right to negotiate a price, but as far as an authorization for purchase, I have a concern with, and I'm concerned that we don't have a cost of the total project.
Nate, I think what you're suggesting is to go back out and do just that, and to come back with a proposal that has been negotiated on a particular piece of property even with possibly a design for building, or you're not going to do that now?
This is specifically asking for permission to approach the owner of that property and
Negotiate a purchase price.
Negotiating a price.
I didn't have it, at least maybe there's a second page to my letter that I didn't have.
The process, though, one of the reasons we're trying to move this along, and I do ask for, I say in my item that we're going to request bids for construction of pole building as well. That's the RFP process that I believe we had to go through, that design-build portion of this, because the property is specific. I don't know how we can necessarily put a bid or request proposals of property within to fit our needs. We've done that through this search. The RFP for the building, I understand that and would like to do that as well. The reason we're trying to push this along is we're on a time frame. The federal government requires that the expenditure of these funds occur within 2 years of receipt. Depending on the process this takes, it could be another year before we have a building erected.
Well, Nate, I'm not overly concerned with that, because regardless of that, I think if we have the property and we have a contract to build, they're not going to come back and take the money from us.
Yes.
I think the key thing here is having a contract to build.
And I would hope that's true.
Yeah.
We have talked to them, requested hard information from the federal government to that effect, and it's not there.
As I listen to this, I guess I am more comfortable with this idea of purchasing a piece of property. If they can make a justification for where the property is and how it benefits the department, I guess I would agree we won't need to go bid that property out. The building, though, I think that's a good thing. Even if the owner or somebody else wants to bid on it, I think that makes sense.
And Commissioner Wilk, I'm not trying to, we will tell you the name of the property and what the price.
And I apologize, because I missed the paragraph that goes at the end of the letter is printed on the back of the page previous in my agenda, and I turned the page over and it wasn't there, so I didn't have the disposition of this. I just come to the end of the sentence and it stopped, so I was confused.
It's been our experience that if people know you're looking for their property and you're a governmental entity, that property tends to creep up. And we're trying to keep that.
And that is true.
And Nate, I'm assuming that there's a geographical area in which you would need to locate the storage building. In other words, it can't be, too far away.
That's correct.
And the properties that you have listed here are all within that geographical area that you would need to locate the building, right?
No, those are properties that were suggested to us. Some actually are too far away in our estimation. They are vacant. They may be too far away. They may be too expensive. They may, not be large enough, whatever the case may be.
We have to have a location that is easily accessible quickly. We don't want to go busting through a neighborhood to go get a marine boat necessarily for a dive call or a marine call. It has to be fairly easy to get to, and it has to be relatively quick. This facility is within 4 to 5 minutes from our station at speed limit.
I'm not necessarily in favor of buying an old building, but that one at 845 Woodmere would be real close. And is it the condition of the building or what?
That's the one right next door,
The bakery,
and they want $1 million for it,
that would be a drawback.
or $700,000, something like that. The last time it was offered, I think it was offered for $1.2 million. I think they've come down a little bit. The information I had, $700,000.
Yeah,
It's an outstanding location. You can't find a better location.
it would help us with our parking issues there as well. We could,
Yeah.
expand that, but the other, it is an old building, as the sheriff said, and he's done a lot of investigation of it. Plus, that building is set up for deliveries, so on the front side, the doors open at ground level. On the back side, there's doors and they open at a ramp. And so that would not really be conducive for what his needs were. So it's perfect
You could have a
location.
building place to float his boat.
It's the perfect location. It's just, it's quite expensive and not
Yeah,
quite
that's what I was
conducive.
thinking.
It would require a lot of work, I think.
They are interested, though. One of the realtors I've talked to said that the people who own that building would be real interested in selling it to the county.
Yeah, so
if
what he's
you're
telling you is
interested-
he's not real interested in paying for it, but if you're interested in buying it so he has more parking, he's interested in that, right?
Yes.
It's been generally built empty for quite a while.
I don't think it's...
It's still
Not now, but it
Oh.
was for quite a while.
Yeah, okay.
Another component of this that the sheriff has taken into consideration is the resale of this. This is an ideal location that will become even more ideal in the future, and the resale of it is, I believe, very, very a good place to be. And
I agree with that concept that the sheriff came up with, that, we may use this money and the building, if there's a move to put a jail and administration building together, it would make sense to include their other equipment at that facility. So if we build this in a location, I thought that was a great idea. If we build it at a location where it could be sold later, put on the market and sold, that money could then be reused, for sheriff needs in the future. So that makes good sense to me.
We're trying to construct this building for somebody else and use it in the interim so that it does have a good potential for resale, and possibly even another branch of Grand Traverse County's government, for example, the Commission on Aging may, I've looked at their building near the Animal Control building, and if down the road, if they need expansion, or if the maintenance facility moves from the Civic Center, this would provide, a large area for them also, or it would be very marketable to private concerns.
Your pleasure, gentlemen.
What would happen if, just for example, we said, go ahead and negotiate on this particular piece of property, but then we also asked you to put out, like Mike was talking about, in a certain geographic area, short time length proposals that you're requesting proposals, because there could be potentially some property in an ideal location that isn't for sale right now, but the realtors always have their fingers out, or even an owner, because it'd be advertised. You might get a heck of a deal, but maybe that wouldn't fit in your time frame. But that would be my preference.
Obviously, we're looking for a good deal. And the vacant lots that we've looked at, there's different costs associated with them depending on where they are. Most of the other I think, parcels that would be for sale that are close and would suit our needs, have buildings on them. So you're buying an existing building that, and I've looked at about 4, maybe 5, that the location's outstanding, but the building doesn't work at all. We'd have to put a lot of money into the building, and it might be even cheaper to level the building. So you're paying a lot for a large amount for a lot that is in a great location, but the buildings just don't work. So to level those, it's kind of like the buying a cottage on Long Lake and tearing that down and building a large house.
No, I'm talking about vacant land. Put the RFP out for vacant land, vacant lots, and put a short time frame on it.
We can do that.
2-3 weeks, and perhaps,
both.
and still at the same time simultaneously negotiate on the piece you have in mind.
We also, in talking with Mr. Aloya, discussed how the process would take place of actual constructions, RFPs, is it bids, what's the board's desire? They have, you don't do that on a regular basis, so there's some needed discussion on how do we actually want to approach that. And I think, whether you want to hire somebody, you want to do somebody to kind of oversee it, or whatever. That'll take a little discussion.
Yeah. My feeling is that if we're going to do construction, probably in the spring, I don't know that, but if that's when it'll take place, the third floor construction should be complete by then, and we've had nothing but good success with Danny Brown managing these projects, and I haven't talked to Danny about that yet, but I would encourage us to, have someone that's either an architect involved or a clerk of the works involved, somebody that then use Danny as our oversight to make sure that it's being constructed the way we had suggested it. So I would like to see Danny involved in that process when we get to that. This is a very unusual project. We usually don't get involved with things like this. So and I don't know, Sheriff, whether we're talking about using an architect to design or whether this is just going to be a kind of a pole barn design and the developers will design it and build it kind of thing.
And we don't want to, this is a storage facility. There is going to be an office component to this for our recreation division, but we have limited funds, and to put a lot of funding into engineering and architecture, it's unnecessary. There are probably pole buildings out there that we can say, that's the one we want, can you please build it? That's one of the concerns we have, is wasting a lot of money on architecture and engineering when it's unnecessary.
I looked at the Kingsley Village Department of Public Services building last week, and that building was constructed about 5 years ago. And if we were, obviously those plans are there, whoever designed and built that or contracted that, why, if that's what we're looking for, why can't we just use those plans again, that type of thing? Some people I've talked to have said, well, we'll do all the design and the construction, it's a turnkey, just tell us what you want. So I think there's several options there that we just need to sit down and talk about.
Well, I think maybe what we need to do this morning is to try to make a decision on what we want to do about property, whether we're going to just allow them to negotiate this particular parcel that they've identified, or if we want them to take a bid. I believe more discussion needs to happen in regard to the RFP for the building itself. And there's a couple reasons I say that. I know recently the fairgrounds got into a significant issue because they built, basically a covered barn area, but because it was considered a public building and a lot available for public assembly, they had to meet a whole lot of different requirements than you would for an agricultural building. Cost them a lot of money in engineering, cost them a lot of money in fees and things that they had not anticipated. I would certainly suggest that before we go out to an RFP for this, we involve both our facilities director, Danny Brown, and our construction code director, Bruce Vermey. It would just save us time
and I think save us money in the long run to involve those people initially before we decide, yeah, this is the building we want, because the building that you and I think would meet our needs very well may not meet public standards. So we want to make sure that we include that in the discussion.
Are we talking about two separate RFPs here? One for the possibility of a parcel of land, and then the other for...
Well, that's the way I read this. This is strictly authorization for them to enter into discussions for the purchase of property. There's nothing here about a building. I don't believe there's anything in what I have that even gets me close to making the decision about allowing you to bid a building, because, I'm not doing that unless we know what kind of a building, how big a building, and somewhere along the way where it's at. I guess I do understand, because I've been around the public buying property a few times, that if we don't tell you which parcel it is, the price stays lower than it does if we identify that we're going to buy one of three pieces, because it always goes up when we do that. So, I don't have a huge problem with authorizing the purchase of the property, but I don't think we're even close to ready for an RFP for the building yet. Larry?
I would make a motion that we allow the Sheriff's Department to enter into negotiations on the piece of property, vacant property they're talking about, and also to put out an RFP for vacant property in a geographic area that supports their needs.
I'd support that.
Okay, motion second. Further discussion?
Then a process that I think would be workable would be to do that and do it in a time frame that you can bring back the result to public safety in October for the board to approve purchase at the end of October. Would that work for you?
Yep.
Okay.
And then along the way, we will start putting together, the information that we need to build the building, because I don't think we're even close to that yet.
And when you want to get together with Bruce and Danny, just let me know, and we'll get a meeting set up to look at that issue, okay?
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thanks, guys. The next information is law enforcement personnel ID information on the GIS website.
Well, I just want to kind of update you. After the last meeting, we sent out a survey to all the county departments that might have this kind of information. We received three other responses from the Register of Deeds, Veterans Affairs, and the Health Department. The Health Department has indicated they're not able to remove the information because of because it is a medical record that's protected, so it's not generally available anyway. The other departments said they can remove them, and it's not at little or no cost to do that. So, and I think the GIS system, we've talked about that. Ernie is also here from GIS to answer any questions that you have. So what I'm saying is, if you decide that this is something that you want to do, I felt it was important that we look at wherever we could remove it, as opposed to just in one location and have it generally available. And it appears we could remove it from the GIS, the Register of Deeds, and the Veterans Affairs Office, notwithstanding the other arguments that Ernie has discussed with you and the other concerns that he's expressed. So,
Gentlemen?
No matter what your decision is, I really do appreciate the process the county has undergone in Ernie's time specifically to identify these things. And obviously, we still feel that it's important to remove that information, but I understand the process and I appreciate that process.
you know, it's interesting. I want to pass this along. Nate, about a week ago or so, without getting into specifics, sent me a what would you call that, a notice, an announcement, a warning?
It's a notice from the Michigan MIAC, it's the state.
Indicating that a certain branch of the, of law enforcement in the state, that they had information that they were being targeted by a motorcycle gang in the state, and that they were collecting home addresses and phone numbers to try to go after these agents in their homes. So I'm sure that wasn't, I'm sure I didn't get it from Nate coincidentally, but it was exactly what he's talking about here. So, you know, I appreciate you sending that to me, Nate.
Yeah, the MIAC gave a warning specifically referenced to gangster disciples threatening families and gaining access to information for family members. And I did give that to Dennis, just as a notice. This is what we see, this is our concern, and I've already stated my position, but I do appreciate the process you have gone through.
Ernie, you want to tell us about how we would go about this? You know, if I read this survey right, there's about, you know, I'm not sure what constitutes the vague ones, but there's only about 6 counties in the state that are actually currently filtering this information. Is that correct?
Yes, that's true. There was some anecdotal differences, but that's basically true.
You know, the obvious question that I always have when we have this discussion is, if it applies to the officers, does it apply to the courts? You know, and where do you start, where do you stop?
Well, if you look at Mr. Cooney's example, or his letter to you, it's accurate. This is not a FOIA. The FOIA protects that information. This is information that the county is providing outside of FOIA. So there's no FOIA exemption there. Judges are not protected via FOIA. There is a University of Michigan case where teachers sued the university for releasing information, private and personal information, and they won that case. The effects of that case have not yet been fully digested. That was brought up to us at a FOIA seminar in Gaylord hosted by MMRMA. We have not fully digested what can and cannot be, but teachers were successful in having the university remove information, private information about them. So the lawyer that was presenting the FOIA up in Gaylord was saying there are implications here that we have not fully recognized, and who is able to have their information removed is not yet known. It could be judges, it could be prosecutors. I don't know.
Dennis, if I read your recommendation on page 18, it says removal of law enforcement personal identification information from the GIS website, the Register of Deeds and Veterans Affairs is applicable.
Yeah, what I'm saying there is that it can be done. There's very little cost involved in it. I do share the concern about what will be next, who will be next, how do we kind of get our arms around this. But I also understand the concern that they have, and I don't think it will be onerous to make this change and remove them from the records.
Gentlemen? Mike, do you have any comments? Seems how you deal with the legal more than I do.
Dennis, did you say this would be more onerous to?
No, I don't think it will be. I don't think it will be. It's the scope of it that we don't know who will be next,
Right.
who will ask. I mean, will the city police then come to us and say, please remove our records? Will the state police come and say, please remove our records? When this came up 3 or 4 years ago, the county decided, no, we're not eliminating anybody from the records. Everyone's going to be available, everyone's equal. I'm sure that Commissioner Wheelock is right. We will get requests. We'll get lots of requests. I think we'll get requests from courts. I think we'll get requests from prosecutor and others. And I think it will be important to kind of determine where we draw the line. And that will be, quite honestly, that's not an easy thing. I mean, it's not who might not have a legitimate concern. It's the relative amount of concern. I mean, they're in law enforcement, they're dealing with these people every single day. But I guarantee you, the clerk down in the treasurer's office who was yelled at by, somebody from the public, because of their bill and, their name is sitting there, they are going to say, I'm concerned just as well. It's relative. So I think that's kind of how you have to look at the issue. But
I kind of think that those are just the realities of today's day and age and what we're facing. And I think this request is meant to be consistent with the exception of law enforcement individuals from the FOIA Act. So, I think it's important. I would move that we allow removal of law enforcement personal identification information from the GIS website, Register of Deeds, and Veterans Affairs as applicable.
I have a motion, do I have support? I'll support for discussion. Larry? You got anything to add?
Well, at the earlier meeting, I stated my opposition to removing it. It's, in today's day and age, transparency is what everybody screams about. And I could see a hidden society, if you will. If your law enforcement, courts, whoever the policymakers in the community deem necessary to protect, all of a sudden you don't know. But what really bothers me is you're removing these. What about equalization, Ernie? They can't be removed by statute, correct?
That's correct.
So I've never met a criminal mind that wasn't clever enough to figure something like that out. And once the word is out, just check equalization records statewide. There's your information. And there's a lot of other places you can get it. So I'm not in favor of the motion. And I spent 29 years in law enforcement. I had my family threatened many times. Virtually every officer I worked with paid to have their name and phone numbers not in the local directory. I chose not to pay. Anybody could call me. I've got the same number. I've had it for almost 40 years. I guess I'll say it again. If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. And, you know, I worried about my family too. But if somebody would have came out and made a physical threat to my family, I'd have had to take the necessary action to stop that physical threat.
You know, my problem is that, you know, with the technology that we have today, and it's advancing every day, you know, I think this would be such a short-term thing, and it's, you know, you're immediately going to be able to access that information through the internet anyway. You know, there's, you know, anyone that's involved can, and understands a computer well, can get your home information and your telephone number on the internet. You know, I have a young man in my office that does it for me all the time when I forget to get a customer's phone number, so he can punch it right up, you know, and get it for me. You know,
You know, that could be, but, I mean, this takes away one easy tool that someone who had, you know, bad intentions to carry out. They may figure out other ways to do it, but this is an easy way, I think, for someone with that intent to do something. And if it doesn't cost very much to follow through, I don't see why, you know, we don't take this step forward. It's one more step toward protecting law enforcement individuals who really are more at risk than anyone else.
Sonny?
Larry?
I was just thinking, after the last meeting that we discussed this issue, I'm not computer literate, except for a business system. So I went to some employees I have, same as Sonny. When you need to know something, just find the person that can help you. So when I got back, I explained the conversation at this meeting to the employee, and I said, I would like you, and I gave him a name of a law enforcement official. She didn't know who he was, but I gave her the name, and I said, see what you can find out. She Googled him, and then within 3 minutes, she had all the information. Married, where he lived, where he worked, and that right there said everything for me, and I think I spoke to that earlier. Unless you're going to get rid of Google.
You can get rid of Google.
Huh?
You can write Google, and say, please remove my information from your server, and they have to do it. So I understand all of these arguments, I do, about the technology, and they can get it eventually. And as you expressed back in June, I believe it was, maybe not, it was July. If they want to get you, they're going to get you.
Exactly.
However, I don't think that we should make it as easy as possible. I think there should be protections in place so that as they progress along the line of identifying somebody or targeting somebody, there could be a flag somewhere along that line. That's what we do. That's how we solve crime. We go backwards along the line that they followed to identify what they did to get there. That's how you do it. So if you're going to protect somebody, you look forward and you say, how could they find out who you are? And you throw barriers against that progress. And I understand your position, I do. But even in your statement, you said the overwhelming majority of officers, even back then, took their names and paid to have their names out of the phone book. So you may have been a rarity. My family didn't sign on for harassment or threats, and I too would take necessary precautions, Mr. Fleece, as everybody would, not just law enforcement. Everybody would. I just don't think that it has to be barrier-free. Would somebody swipe a credit card to get my information off of the white pages or yellow pages or whatever for $5? They might. And if they're mad enough, they probably would. But that would give the investigation aspect of that a little bit of teeth to know, well, who got this information, where to come from. I can go back through a search warrant or subpoena and I know that this guy over here swiped my credit card, swiped his credit card and got my address. Kind of easy to figure out who did that at that point. That's all we're asking, is to throw a barrier to access to our information.
Any other discussion? I guess the comment that I'm going to make is I'm going to have Sarah do a roll call in a minute, and I'm going to vote for this motion as a recommendation to the full board. But I will be pulling this decision from the consent calendar to allow all 9 commissioners to have input on that decision. Okay? I think it's an important enough decision that we have to have the input of all 9 county commissioners to make this decision. So I will have Sarah do a roll call vote, and I believe there will be votes enough to move the recommendation forward. But I will be asking that it be pulled from the consent calendar for all commissioners to have input.
And probably we would ask,
Is that fair?
we would ask for you to be there, Nate, to answer any questions.
Sarah, if you would, please.
Please.
No.
Stefka?
Yes.
Burlap?
Yes. Okay, the motion carries. It will be on the board recommendation at the end of the month.
Thank you.
And it will be on the consent calendar, but I'm sure it will be pulled. Okay? Any other business to come before this board?
Anything for us?
I think we're all set.
I guess I would real quickly just mention that the election for the Commission on Aging to be unionized was held about a week ago, and it was defeated 30-3. So they will not be unionizing at this time.
30-3?
Yes.
Close.
Wow. And the upcoming one about the DPW, we haven't
received
heard
a date
any
yet.
more yet about that?
We're in disagreement with the union. The union is insisting that it be done by paper ballot, and we are insisting that it be done by a regular election where people come in and vote. And so we have to write a position paper to Merck to argue our point on that. And just so you know, I just believe it's important for people to have the ability to come in physically and you know, in a closed setting, and I just prefer that over, we'll make time available, I just prefer that over people, you know, being asked to send in envelopes. This will, I think, be more compelling for people to actually come and vote. We're going to do it during work, so everybody will be there, they'll all have a chance to vote. I think the more people, the better.
Okay. Seeing no other business, we stand adjourned. Thank you.